Welcome to Classes of Mail. Before you listen, you should know that Alan Gigax is not in any sense an official spokesman for the Post Office, the NALC, or anybody else. His opinions are inherently his own and should probably be disregarded. Same for his guests. Any information you hear on this podcast could be wrong and should not be relied upon for any reason. Enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Classes of Mail. My name is Alan Gigax, and today I am going to talk about a route inspection. I just had a one-day route inspection. I had the 1838C in the morning where they count up all my mail, and then I had the 3999 where they follow me out on the street and, see how long my route takes and see how I'm doing. And we're going to get into that in just a second, but first a little bit of side business. I presume that pretty much everybody who listens to Classes of Mail also listens to From A to Arbitration. If you don't, you should. That's the number one postal podcast for a very good reason. And the episode that was released yesterday, as I record this, was about the way money is being spent up at headquarters. And guys, it's damning. It is so troubling to hear what the money up there is being spent on, and that it's being spent and being allocated without oversight from the executive council. So on Corey's podcast, David Grosskopf was on there along with Kamitra Simpson-Lewis and Rocky Ocasio, and they went to Washington, D.C., and they did essentially an audit of what our union at the national level has been spending money on. And guys, it is absolutely worth the listen. It's a very important episode. And one of the things that they didn't address directly, and I'm surprised that David Grosskopf didn't mention this directly, but I think it's also worth mentioning, is the work that they did going to national, looking at the book, saying, hey, how did this get approved? Hey, why are we spending money on that? Isn't that what the trustees are supposed to be doing? Where are the current trustees who should be asking these exact same questions? And so if you ever needed a reason to vote for David Grosskopf over Charlie Hege, there's your reason right there. Because even before he gets elected to become the next trustee, or one of the three, he's already doing the job and already finding things that are troubling and reporting them publicly. And that is important work, and it should be supported. And so please, if you have not already, download that episode from Corey. So with that in mind, something funny occurred to me, because I plan out my episode, right? If you're watching on video, normally I have my tablet, but these notes that I have, I thought about something that, hey, if I share this episode from Corey, and then there winds up being anything in there that's not true, as we learned in my last episode, according to the people in Branch 70, that's defamation, because apparently they think that anything you share has to be completely fact-checked, because if anything in there winds up not being true, then that's defamation just by sharing it. And dude, I presume most of you guys have listened to episode 1 of the Branch 70 reply to Michael Rivera. Episode 2 is coming soon. Episode 2 was actually going to release today as you hear this, but I'm pushing it back because I wanted to get this one out. So regardless of the threat that I am now under of being accused of defamation just by sharing something and not completely fact-checking it before I do, I'm just telling you anyway, you should go listen to Corey's episode. And, the things that he talks about in that episode about these spending problems, it's obviously not restricted to the national level. We heard when we had on the guys from New York, when we had on Brian Gutierrez, Carlton Pinto, they talked about spending in their branch that did not have approval and money that was going out without approval. And in my own branch, we just had our last branch meeting before the national convention. And afterward, there was a meeting for the delegates. And one of the things that was asked of the delegates is, hey, do you want to go out to a steak dinner that's going to be paid for by our state association? The Nevada State Association of Letter Carriers is going to take all the delegates from Nevada out for a steak dinner. And every delegate said yes, at least as far as I could tell, except for me. I just don't think that it's right for the Table 2 carriers out there, for any carrier, to have that money taken out of their paycheck to go support the union and the union's cause, and then for us in the union to use that money to buy ourselves a steak dinner. That's not what that money is for. And I feel like there are better uses for that money. I mean, if that's not the definition of self-serving, I don't know what is. And, we have money apparently at the state association to take people out to a fancy dinner, but we saw in our state newsletter that there's not enough money to keep publishing the state newsletter on a monthly or 10 a year or whatever basis that it was on. And so they're going to have to cut back the publication schedule because there's just not enough money for it. But there's enough money to buy yourself a steak dinner on that, out of that same pot. Like, that does not seem right to me. And, it's the same at the national level, that there's enough money to send somebody on a trip to Turkey for a political meeting or whatever the excuse was. You'll hear it in Corey's episode. But there's not enough money to bring somebody from a rural town in Iowa to get training at national headquarters. We don't spend money on that. Like, the whole thing, the priorities, they're fucked up, and it's not okay. All right, so that's that. Now that that's out of the way, let me get to the reason why I'm actually here, doing a little changer music. All right, so I had the count of all my mail. And then I also had the street observation. So not only was there a $39.99 street observation, but while they're out there, they also did the 4584, which is the observation of driving practices. And when I saw the notification that I was going to be followed on this day, it says, hey, on either Monday or Tuesday, you're going to have an 1838 and a 39.99, and this is notification. Interestingly, we're supposed to have at least a day's notice for the 1838. Well, I was off. It was 4th of July. I was off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Came back to work Monday, and the note is there that says either Monday or Tuesday. It happened Monday, so I had no notice. And so that's a grievance, and hopefully the steward at my station is handling that grievance for me. I gave him my statement and gave him the paper, and we'll see. But anyway, when I saw that notification, I didn't get scared. And that's why classes of mail exist, because for a long time in my career, if I was going to be followed, that's the kind of thing that makes a fella nervous. You don't like management coming out and following you on your route because they're eyeballing you all day, and what are they going to look at? What are they going to see? And it's very nerve-wracking. But after, 260 episodes of Classes of Mail or whatever it is, it's sunk in, and I'm like, dude, no problem. You follow me all day long, and I know I'm going to do the route the right way. I've developed these habits delivering the mail each day of put on your seatbelt, curb your wheels, take your satchel. Satchel is a local policy here that anytime you go up to somebody's door or even into their yard, you have to have your satchel. And so no problem. I do that every time. And so all this stuff that is a bugaboo for carriers that carriers are nervous about, if you do it all the time, you don't have to worry about it. And you think about when management comes out to see you just spur of the moment, like on an impromptu observation, what are they looking for? They're not necessarily going to say, hey, I need you to go faster. I need you to walk faster, pick up the pace. If they do, that's a grievance because there is no set standard for walking and there's no set standard for pace when you're out on the street. What they're really looking for is safety violations and procedural violations and things to get you in trouble. So I have in my hand, you can see it if you watch Classes of Mail on YouTube, the actual 4584 from my observation. And I want to go over it with you so that you know what management is looking for and what can wind up getting you in trouble. And you'll notice nowhere on here is it carrier took at least 60 paces per minute. There is nothing like that. All right, so the first thing is possessed a valid driver's license. You do have to carry your driver's license with you while you were out on the route if you're driving. Next, performed expanded vehicle check. That was done in the morning, and the supervisor did watch me do that. And I did partner up with another carrier, hey, check my lights, help me check the vehicle. Vehicle equipped with accident report kit. Presumably it's in there. Mirrors not obstructed by items on tray. So this is something that I actually learned from a CCA who I was training back in the day, because I used to put in the LLV in the forwardmost, you could put 3 trays on the tray in the LLV. I hate that they're both called trays. The tray that you put your mail in, and then like the big square tray that those trays sit in. Anyway, 3 trays fit in there. And so the forwardmost tray, I would put my parcels, and then in the middle tray, I would put my DPS, and then in the backmost tray toward the back of the truck, I would put my residual. And a CCA pointed out to me like, hey, your spurs can be like all different sizes, and they can wind up blocking the mirror. Why don't you put your DPS in the front? And I'm like, dude, how have I been doing this for like 15 years? And that never occurred to me. And so now I always put my DPS in the frontmost. And that also means, you have more DPS than anything else. And so that's the least amount of twisting to get to your DPS. So with the DPS in the front, it's never going to block that mirror. And then residual in the middle, spurs in the back, because the spurs are the least frequently accessed, and that's the most twisting. So anyway, mirrors not obstructed by items on tray, check. Next, traveling to and from the route. Wore safety belt and shoulder straps and a lap belt. Check. Did not use cell phone, Bluetooth devices, headphones, MDD, or other handheld devices while driving. Dude, notice that the MDD is even on here. The scanner is on here. And as far as the headphones, well, I knew I was being followed that day, so I did not have my earbuds in. And let's assume, as far as management knows, I never wear my earbuds while I'm out on the route, and certainly not while I'm in the vehicle. But this is something that's on the checklist. This is something that they're looking for. And so you need to be aware that, these are the things that can potentially get you in trouble if management comes out. Next, mirrors not obstructed by items on tray. Oh, that's on there twice. It's in the loading and in the traveling section. Next, kept vehicle in center of lane. Looking to make sure you're not drifting. Next, minimize lane changes, turn to or from proper lane. So like they want to make sure that if you're turning right onto a street that has multiple lanes, that you turn into the rightmost lane. These are just regular traffic rules. Change lanes with suitable gap in traffic, so you're not cutting people off, things like that. Look left, right, and left at all intersections. The supervisor was driving behind me, so I don't know how he would have seen that, but this is something, again, this lets you know what they're looking for. You keep these things in mind, you build good habits, and then when they come out and watch you, you don't have to worry. Next, kept both hands on the steering wheel. So there are 3 checkboxes here, potentially. There's S for satisfactory, there's U for unsatisfactory, and then there's NA for not applicable. And so, where did I, there we go. Keep both hands on the steering wheel. I got an unsatisfactory on that one. I don't know what that's about. It's possible that I had one hand on the wheel from time to time. I really couldn't say. Maybe the supervisor just couldn't just put satisfactory for everything. I don't know. But that one I got unsatisfactory. But there was no discussion with me like, hey, this is a safety issue. All right, moving on. Signaled properly when merging, changing lanes, turning, and or exiting. Next, slowed down or changed lanes when tailgated / did not tailgate. Yeah, so one of the things that took me a long time to learn is that, like, when you're in the postal vehicle, nobody expects you to drive fast. If the speed limit is 35 and you go 33, nobody's going to trip about like, oh, why is this guy going so slow? You're in a mail truck. You stop all the time. Like it's not expected. Not to mention those LLVs have a hard time getting above 33 anyway. So there's no reason to tailgate people. That's kind of the point here. Next, vehicle doors closed when traveling to and from route. No problem. I keep the door closed all the time unless I'm actively doing sidewalk or curbside delivery. Let's see. Next one is, turned on lights when visibility was impaired. That one I got a not applicable. Next, used vehicle flashers when appropriate. And I got unsatisfactory on that one. And that's fair because I don't use my flashers. I know most people use them all the time. I don't see a big point to it. It was not a safety issue. We're not required to do it. As far as I know, it's recommended. If you know different, please let me know. I haven't hardly ever used my flashers. I'm in a residential neighborhood. I'm not delivering on busy streets or anything like that. And so I just don't feel like it's necessary. If you know a good reason why I should be using my flashers, or if there is an actual safety issue, like if you're a driver safety instructor, let me know. But I got unsatisfactory on that one. Next, reduce speed during adverse conditions. I didn't really run into those, but that's, again, these are things management is looking for. Stop before stop sign, crosswalk, stop line, railroad crossing, and all red traffic lights. So yeah, like at a stop sign, there'll be that line painted on the street, and you're supposed to stop before you get to that, not after. Obeyed all state and local traffic laws. I got to check on that one. That's good. And yielded right-of-way to children, pedestrians, emergency vehicles, and cross traffic. All right, so that's all the driving stuff, the traveling to and from and within route. Now we go on to mounted delivery, which I had some. And wore safety belt. Yes, I wear the seatbelt all the time, 100% of the time. I have had, so all of this stuff for me is habit, where when I'm stopping, and we'll probably get into this in just a minute, when I stop to do a dismounted delivery, as I'm pulling up, I crank the wheel to the right and essentially drive into the curb. And so there's the curb the wheels part. Then with my right hand in an LLV, I'll go brake, park, key. So I set the brake, put the truck in park, take out the key. And while I'm doing that, my left hand is taking off my seatbelt. And so it's all this one motion that I do every single time. When I was in the ProMaster, I would drive up to where I was going to park, and then I would crank the wheel at the last second to, curb the wheels. And then when my right hand went to put the vehicle in park, my left hand would go down and pull up the parking brake. And that just became habit. And then I guess it must have been my right hand would come back and release the seatbelt. Pretty sure that's how that was set up. But in any case, you have to build these habits. And there were times where I had a vehicle change and I don't have a habit for this vehicle. And I would realize oh shit, I just drove to this box without a seatbelt on. Dude, that's not okay. And I got to make sure that I'm building these habits. So the seatbelt habit every time, 100% of the time, I'm never going to be without a seatbelt. That is guaranteed. When I finally get one of those new duck vehicles, I'm going to have to figure out a routine for that, for the NGDV. Next, did not finger or hold mail while driving. So I know in my younger days when I was a T6 and before I became a trainer, this is one of the ways that I would save a bunch of time when I was on mounted curbside delivery, the out the window delivery, is as I was driving from one box to another, I would be using my left hand to finger the mail to get it all ready so that as soon as I pull up to the box, I could just throw it in. That is not okay, guys. It's a safety issue. You're taking your focus from the road. You're taking your hand off the wheel. And this time that you're saving, there is nowhere on this checklist that says cut corners on safety to save 5 seconds at the box, because that's not what management is checking for. That's not what's going to get you in trouble. If you're doing things right, yes, it is going to take a little bit longer, but A, you make more money. B, you make yourself discipline proof. And C, you guarantee that you and your fellow carriers have jobs Because if we all cut corners and take 10 minutes off of our route, eventually that adds up to a whole carrier. And that's like what happened at my station when we had route adjustments and we lost 3 routes. All right, moving on. Signaled properly when approaching or leaving a curb. He actually didn't check that box. Dude, I don't signal. That's probably something that I should start doing. He didn't check satisfactory or unsatisfactory. He gave me a pass on that, but thank goodness. Like when I'm pulling away from the curb, I do not put my left blinker on. Did not retrieve mail from storage area while driving. Yeah, that's an easy one for me. That's no problem. Decelerated gradually when stopping. Okay. Vehicle doors closed when entering or crossing intersections. Yeah, I close the door all the time. To me, there's not a big benefit to having that door open. You do get some more ventilation, but dude, it's not worth it. And, again, that's what this paper is for, right? This is what management is looking for. And so if you're driving with the door open, it's right here on this checklist, and you're going to get dinged for it and possibly disciplined for it. Next, signaled properly when merging, changing lanes, turning, and or exiting. Stopped before stop sign, crosswalk, whatever, blah, 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 same thing. Look left, right, and left at intersections. Yielded right-of-way to children, pedestrians, emergency vehicles, and cross traffic. All right, and then finally we get to parking. Avoided backing up wherever possible. Check. Used mirrors/camera where provided while backing, and mirrors are properly adjusted. Parked in a designated parking space, did not park in or block fire lanes, parked an appropriate distance from an intersection according to state or local law. So this is another one, right? Carriers will argue about where they're allowed to park. Oh, if I'm just delivering the mail, I can park here. Well, we've talked about this on previous episodes. There's a difference between stopping and parking. Like if you're just stopping, you're going to hop out, put the mail in a box, hop back in, and immediately drive away. You're there for 10 seconds. That's stopping. The rules for that might be a little different. But if you're going away from the vehicle, like if you have to go up to somebody's door, you're going to deliver a certified letter, delivering a package, something like that. Or if you're delivering businesses, where you're going to be away from the truck for more than just a couple seconds, you need to park legally. And it's on this checklist. You're not going to get a pat on the back that says, hey, good job parking in that fire lane because that saved you 13 seconds. No, you're going to get disciplined for that. Next, curbed wheels in proper direction, placed gear in park, turned off ignition, removed key, set parking brake, chalked tires where required. So again, there's that habit. As I'm pulling up, I'm going to crank that wheel, drive into the curb, my wheels are curbed. And then with my right hand, it's brake, park, key, while my left hand takes off my seatbelt. And then when I get back in, it's the same thing, where as soon as I get in, first thing is I turn on the ignition, then I reach, put my seatbelt on, and then I put the truck in drive. And once I get down to drive, I flick the brake and release the brake. And then I straighten out the wheels and I drive away. All of this is just habit that you do it the same way again and again and again. When you're new, or when you're training, or when you're learning, or when you're trying to get better, or whatever it is, there's really 2 main ways to get faster. One way, if you're concerned about being faster. One way is to cut corners and to just don't do those things. You can save a second at every stop if you just leave the truck running. The other way to get faster is to build these habits and to do it the same way every time. And, eventually it becomes second nature and it's not awkward and it actually is reasonably fast. Next, closed and locked internal cargo doors while parked. I got a satisfactory on this one, and I never did that. I know that's something that we're supposed to do, and I have done that from time to time, but this day I never did it, and I got a satisfactory for that. This would be one of those things where it'd be very difficult for management to discipline for this, at least where I carry the mail, because nobody closes that door. Is it a good idea? Yeah, it probably is a good idea. In fact, I know it's a good idea because it's pretty easy to break into the front of an LLV. It's difficult to break into the back. And so if the back is secured, then you can have your stuff back there and it's not going to get stolen, or the mail is not going to get stolen. Certainly not as easily. Locked and secured vehicle when not in direct sight. This is something that I'm pretty meticulous about. Essentially anything that's a greater distance than just the sidewalk, I'm going to lock and close and lock that door. And finally, obeyed posted signs, directional arrows, and travel lanes in parking lot, and satisfactory on that. So that's it. That's the whole checklist. This is what they're looking for when they come out to do the street observation. And then down at the bottom, part D is professional driving practices demonstrated, recognition recommended. And it has these checkboxes. Checkbox number 1 is personally commend employee. That's what was checked for me, that I should be personally commended by the supervisor. Oh, the glory of that. The other options are a letter of appreciation. That would have been cool. A gift certificate. That would have been cooler still, but management doesn't do that stuff anymore, and it's sad. Or other. And then comments, it said curbed wheels and has a double satchel when doing park and loop, and the supervisor signed off on it. So that was my street observation, and that's the way I want it to go for you guys. Again, I'm going to tell an anecdote before we get out of here. I've told it before, but it's worth repeating. One time, I went out to look up CCA to give the CCA auxiliary assistance. I was on the overtime list, and I'm going to go help out this CCA. And when I pull up on the CCA, it's a residential neighborhood, it's park and loop, and the CCA is driving the park and loop. Instead of walking from house to house, they're going back out to the street, driving forward one house, and then hopping out, going up to the door, going back, driving forward one house, which is definitely not efficient, especially if you're doing it correctly. But the CCA wasn't doing it correctly. The CCA was leaving the door open, not setting the brake, not curbing the wheel, and going up to the door without a satchel, and then, running back to the truck and then driving forward one stop. Luckily, the truck was off, but that was about the only thing that carrier did right. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? What is with all these violations? And he says, oh, I'm running behind schedule, and, management wants me to hurry, and so that's what I'm doing. Essentially, he says he's trying to please management. And I said, yeah, dude, if management comes out here, if I was management, came out here right now, do you think that I would give you a pat on the back and be like, hey, good job. Thank you for saving all this time. You're doing fantastic. No, there's not a chance that would happen. You're going to get disciplined. You're going to possibly get fired. You're definitely going to get, a letter of warning at a minimum. They're not going to thank you for doing all of this. And if you do it the right way, they're never going to discipline you for taking too long. They can't. And so, guys, there is benefit from doing it the right way. And one of the bigger benefits, in my opinion, is to not have that stress of, oh my gosh, what if management comes out and sees me? What am I going to do? So that is my message for today. Again, as a reminder, wrong button. As a reminder, check out that episode of From 8 Arbitration about the way your money is being spent in national. I can't remember the title of the episode, but the last word was profligate, which is an excellent word. And that's all I got. The next episode is going to be the part 2 of the Branch 70 response, Branch 70 in their own words. And guys, it's a banger. It is inflammatory. I almost did a prequel episode because by the time I got done with episode 2 and had really dug into everything, there was stuff that I was so pissed off about that I wanted to go back and make sure that it was all focused on. But ultimately, 2 episodes devoted to it, and what I've done 5 total maybe devoted to it in all these hours, it's enough. I think you get the idea of why this is a problem. So that's all I got, guys. Thank you very much for listening, and I will catch you all next time.